I'm Dave Bull. I'm a team rector and area dean in Marlow, which is halfway between Oxford and London. I've been in post for about 10 years, and I lead a team of 4 churches here and a deanery of 35 churches. I first heard about Lead Academy because I knew Martin, one of the directors. I'd also heard about it through a friend who'd just been through the project, and some other people I knew who were leading churches and thinking about it as well. And for us, it came at a really good time because we were thinking about how to go forward with strategy. I had a look at the materials and that the quality of the program and the quality of the people who were delivering it was a key factor for us. And also we were looking to make a step change in the way we were leading the church, and we were forming a strategy group. So it just felt like God's timing that it opened a door, and we just had to walk through it. So it was an easy decision for us to take part. And I came along with a mix. There were a team of 7. There were 7 of us. 2 were ordained, 2 were staff team, and 3 were lay leaders from the church. So going on the Lead Academy program had a massive impact on our team. Just going away overnight on a residential, we had so much fun. It really drew us together. We had a lot of shared meals, and it had a real impact on bonding that leadership team together. And I think as well, it gave us some real time to focus. We never, even with the best will in the world in the parish, there's no way we'd have 48 hours to just really focus on this in prayer, in discussions, in creative thinking, and having time to really develop things. So it helped us to carve out time that, if I'm honest, we wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think as well, it was so productive. The time that we spent together, we were just amazed actually at what a step forward we took every time we went away for the learning community. And for me as a leader, kind of seeing this happen, I think some people looked at me and thought, wow, that's great. How did you organize that? But to me, it felt like I didn't. I just said, yes, let's enter into this process. And then all this stuff unfolded. It was such a gift. And it helped me realize, actually, it's not as hard to totally revise the strategy of a church as maybe I thought it was. It can be, you can feel under a lot of pressure as a leader, but this really just opened a door. We walked through it, and then all this good stuff happened. As a senior leader, it really changed me. Firstly, I was being led through the process, so I could both participate as part of a team, but also we could talk about my role in a way that I wasn't raising the topic. So one of the things that came out of this was a whole new role description for me, and which has been really liberating, exciting. I feel I've got back to more what I was called to do in the first place. But I haven't felt self-conscious about that because it wasn't me who was raising the issue. And that's been a massive blessing. Well, if we had all 7 of us sitting here and asked what was the most amazing thing about the Lead Academy experience, I think a lot of the team would say being with the other churches. God used those people in so many ways. Individual connections between people who were doing the same job or just had something in common. The coffee times were just amazing times where God used those conversations to encourage us. But also some of the churches are quite similar to us, and with them we were able to really wrestle with some of the same issues together. But God also used some of the churches that were most different to us and helped us to see things in a new way. So the richness of going through it with those 4 other churches was one of the most special parts of the program for us. And when we came back and tried to share what we felt God had shown us and start to embed it in the life of the church, again, we'd been able to ask those questions, or we'd been given those questions to consider while we were away. So one of the things we did was we handed out postcards to everyone in the church, which had a sentence about our sort of purpose as a church, but a blank for everyone to fill in. And then everyone, we got hundreds of these filled in, and we put them all up in a big display at the back of the church. That was one tangible way that we took what we'd been working on and involved the whole church in it in a way that everyone, even if they weren't there, they could see. Or if they'd missed that Sunday, they could pick up a card and pin it to the board themselves. And we also developed values for the church, which we did a lot of work, spent a lot of time on that, and we came up with some new values as a church, which we then preached through. They're plastered up at the back of our church, and those have been massively influential, I think, in what's happened since. Well, I think one of the ways that it was most beneficial for us, the Lead Academy process, is that the pandemic came and we had just spent a year, 18 months working really hard on our values, talking about the fact that our plans might change, but our values are going to stay the same. And then as soon as we'd finished them, like literally 2 Sundays after we'd finished preaching through them, everything changed. But those values were there, and I look back and think it's been like the keel of the boat. The storms hit, but those have kept us going. It's okay. We know that these are the things we need to be true to, because these are things we've just feel God has given us. So I think those values, we've returned to them again and again. And I look at some of the best things we've done through the pandemic time, and actually they really are core. They're centered on those values. And I think God used that, to obviously he is the rock and the one who's guided us through it. But I think that's one of the main things he's used through the pandemic, is this very fresh set of ideas that we knew, whatever else changes, if we do these, we're being true to what God's calling us to. I think they always need revisiting, because one of the things the pandemic's brought is a whole load of new people who had no idea what we were talking about before the pandemic. So we do need to keep revisiting them, but I think they are informing the rebuilding and the emergence of a new church. Our church has been pruned, like many churches, but there's also lots of new growth. And I think all of that is true to the values that we feel God gave us through the Lead Academy process. So I don't think we'll be changing them anytime soon. I think they really have stood the test of the pandemic, but they're also now informing maybe some of the different values come into play in different ways. But as we're now looking to this new period of growth, I think the values are still foundational to us knowing and feeling confident that we're on the course God wants us to be on. So part of the process of Lead Academy is we have coaching in between the residential sessions, and we chose to use that partly where I would meet with Martin, our coach, one-to-one, and partly we as a team would meet and have team coaching. And that worked really helpfully in many ways. Firstly, it's a milestone. You've got to revisit all the work because you've got this there, which I know that sounds obvious, but that was helpful to us. It was really helpful for me as a senior leader to be able one-to-one to just check, how I was leading through the process and get some valuable feedback in those one-to-one coaching sessions. And so that was a really helpful confidential space where I could be really honest about where things were going, how the team dynamic was working, how I was leading, as part of this team. But then when we got together for our team coaching, I loved those sessions because these guys were taking, a couple of hours out of their time in the office, or they were going into London at lunchtime because they were spending time. And I love the fact we were investing in our lay leaders in the same way that we invest in our clergy. We were treating them as full leaders of the church, and they were in there in this kind of midweek strategy meeting with the coach, reflecting on actually a few months on, how did it go when we took these ideas back to the church? What bumps did we hit? How are we going to respond to that? And that was a really new thing, I think, for us to have that level of kind of one teamness, and the seams between the clergy, the staff, and the lay leaders kind of disappeared completely. We were just all leading it together. That was a brilliant part of the process for us. So as I look back 3 years after we started the process at what the lasting impact has been of Lead Academy, there are lots, but I would say that the fruitfulness, the ongoing fruitfulness of the work we did, this was, if there's some things I've been on where you kind of get home, you put the file on the shelf and you kind of 6 months later you go, oh, there were some good ideas in that. This has been the opposite experience where the stuff we did with Lead Academy is still, probably almost anyone in our church would be able to tell you some of the things that we brought back with us around the values or the new projects that we started up, new initiatives. So I think the ongoing fruitfulness has been one of the lasting benefits. The relationships, both with the Lead Academy team, who I'm still in contact with, but also some of the other church leaders in the learning community. I've quite frequently been in contact with them, and that's been, I feel like I'm part of a new support group of people, and we've been through quite a lot together. We've journeyed for 2 years, actually a bit more because of the pandemic together, and so there's been a real bond there that endures, and also the ongoing inspiration. I think that the Lead Academy team are constantly providing. So during the pandemic, for example, some of the Zoom calls we were on, some of the ways they convene church leaders together is massively helpful to me. It's a space I don't have any other way of touching base with leaders from all around the country. And I feel like we're part of a network now, which provides a different focus some of the other networks I'm part of, and has added a lot of value. So one of the things that came out of the learning community was being part of Leader to Leader, which is a convening of church leaders to discuss issues that we're all wrestling with. And that, to me, some of the leaders I already knew, some I've only ever met on Zoom, but those are, for me, those are must-attend sessions, because they are just an opportunity, and almost it helps that it's on Zoom, because it's only an hour or two out of my day or a morning, but I get a whole load of new creative thinking, some reflections from what other leaders who I really respect are thinking and doing, encouragement, and it's an opportunity to just take a time out really from what I'm doing here in the parish, which can become so all-consuming, and just get a view of what God's doing across the country and how he's leading different churches. And that's been really helpful and inspiring. I think if I was asked by someone who was considering taking their church through Lead Academy process, I think I would say there is real cutting edge thinking in Lead Academy. And I think that the team there, they have the people with the gifts, and they also have the time, which a lot of our, more structured leaders in the diocese or in other kind of other organizations don't have, to really be out there and accessing cutting edge thinking. Not that there's anything automatically good about new thinking, but so much is changing now that I think it feels like they're gathering and researching stuff and bringing the best in. And I think that's really, really valuable. I think as well, the relationships and the team building aspect of it has been huge for us. And the focus on, it's not just investing in one person or one leader, but it's about bringing a leadership team. That is unique really in my experience, and has been so helpful. So if you're looking to build your staff team, your leadership team, your senior team, going on Lead Academy has been the biggest thing that's built that team in our church. And so that's a massive benefit of it. And I think as well, the quality of the process, it's very well thought through, and it leads you through a strategic process, which can be a really tough thing to do. And as a senior leader, if you're trying to work out which of all these different options am I going to actually follow from our strategy process, it's all done on a plate for you, and you just have to follow it. And it does a fantastic job of that. So I would encourage everyone to get in touch and talk and pray and ask, Lord, is this the time for us to go through this process together? Because, for us, it definitely was the time, and it's been such a blessing to us. I think as I reflect on my involvement with Lead Academy, one of the things that's been most valuable to me is just that the attitude, the heart, if you like, behind the team, and the culture. I think there's a great humility. They're not out to sell you a brand. They're not out to promote themselves. They just want to serve the local church, and they'll do anything if it is a blessing to the church. And they don't need to be like the stars of the show. They just want to facilitate a process that helps you grow as a team. On the residentials, we were given loads of time together as a team. It wasn't like they had so much content they wanted to shove down our throat. They just wanted to lead a process that would bless us. And that's been very precious to me. And I think it's a massive blessing to have a group like Lead Academy. They're not there to make as much money as they can out of it. They're not there to kind of promote their own profile. They just want to bless the local church. And that has been amazing for us.